Well, hello and welcome also from my side to the second day of the EMEA retail event. As Tobias has already introduced me so kindly, I'm Deepthy, working as an audience and display specialist. And well, I'm very happy to be here today. And the reason why I'm here today with you is to discuss with you, on the one hand, what's the most important audience signal, and then on the other hand, what do you need to keep in mind when you're actually implementing optimizations based on those audience signals. So as he said before, we're going to go quite deep into the account, and I'm going to show you some of the best practices in order to work, well, quickly and efficiently. However, before we go that deep into the product and into the accounts, I would like everyone to take a look at this picture. Oh, wait. Okay, that picture doesn't exist on this presentation. That can happen as well. However, we're going to just move on. And what I wanted to show you is, or I actually wanted to remind you how it is when you go shopping, maybe after work, and you go to the little shop around the corner, or maybe if you remember after you went from school home and you go to this little shop around the corner, which is run by this old friendly lady who knows you quite well and who also, well, likes to talk to you. So she might ask you how you are, how your day was, so you have a little bit of a chit-chat, and if she has a lucky day, or better said, if you have a lucky day, you even get something extra for free. So it's actually this personal bonding and this personal relationship that you have with this old lady in the shop around the corner that makes you enjoy the shopping experience even more. And I tell you, at the end of the day, either you have an offline shop or online shop. In both cases, as a potential customer, you enjoy this personal relationship. And remarketing this for search ads is actually the product in order to approach and treat your customer or your returning visitors the best way possible. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at what kind of potential there is in remarketing this for search ads. So that I just get a feeling of who's actually sitting in the room. Just a quick hands up, who has been working with remarketing lists for search ads? Okay, so the majority of people. Perfect. What we're also going to do is, if you remember from yesterday, the framework that Jeanette has shown, we're going to go into the account and I'll show you how you actually implement everything of these steps. And then we're going to go even further and I will show you what kind of advanced strategies are actually available right now. So that means we're going to go into the Google Tag Manager and I will show you what kind of opportunities we have here. So, in order to have this kind of personal approach towards your most profitable target group, you have to know at first who your most profitable target group is. So maybe some of you guys who sit here are working for a fashion retailer. So who's working for a fashion retailer? Yeah, and I guess so quite a lot. And I guess you have quite a good image of who your profitable target group is. So maybe female, high income, interested in shoes. And you actually know all of this information. You can get insights into all of your audiences and all of the people who are actually clicking on the ad. And if you remember from yesterday, the power of signals is quite significant. If you look at this guy, you know also from your audience where they're purchasing the most. Are they coming from mobile? Are they buying something on the desktop? And based on his search behavior, you also know quite well his demographics. And of course, all of these information are vital for your optimization. On the one hand, because it helps you to target your campaign properly and also to make sure that you're meeting with your budget, that you're addressing the most important audience, but also in order to have a general idea of who your most profitable target group is. However, one very, very important information is not on the slide. And that's the information and the fact whether the user who clicks on your ad, whether he has been on your site before or not. And that is actually very important. So why is this important? I mean, humans are creatures of habit, and also if you think about yourself, you like to go somewhere where you have been before. And we can see that in the data. Oh, and that is actually the old lady I was talking about before. So what I want to do with you today is I want to show you in the account what you have to do in order to become like this old lady to your users. And that kind of should be your goal, because you want to have an approach in order to prepare your most profitable target group. So, as I see, we can see this in the data, how important the fact is that somebody has been on my site. So we see here the yellow ones are the returning visitors who know your brand, who know you. And the blue ones are the new visitors. And as you can see here, a small amount of the impressions are causing quite a big amount of clicks and then result in an immense amount of conversions. And these kind of insights are available for all of your campaigns. If we compare that to all of the other audience signals, this is the audience signal where we see the biggest performance difference. And that's why it is very important that you can actually be in the position to tell, well, your team and to tell how much are the returning visitors actually, how much better are they performing? Are they performing better? And in 96% of the cases that I've seen, the yellow ones, the returning visitors, are performing much better. So it's approximately 5% of all the impressions that cause 32% of all the conversions. And I think this number should actually ring a bell, because it shows you, hey, if 5% is responsible for 1/3 of all my conversions, you should focus on this 5%. And this is quite a familiar picture that I see. So usually it's around 5 to 10% of all the impressions coming from returning visitors. So what does that mean for you? How do you actually, well, invest your daily budget more smartly? How can you do that? What you need to do is you need to be aware that you have options to increase your overall impression share within your most profitable target group. And if these returning visitors are actually clicking much more and converting much stronger than your new visitors, you should try to do everything to increase the relevant impression share within this audience. And of course, it's very easy said to work efficiently in your daily budget. And of course, everyone has his limits on his daily budget. And then it's the question on how do you actually distribute this budget. And this is the time when we step in with our RLSA framework. So what you need to do at the first time when you're working with remarketing lists for search ads, and if you want to have a significant impact on the existing campaigns, is that you need to prefer your old friends. So you might ask yourself, who are your old friends? And the old friends, or what I define as an old friend, is everyone who has been on my site before in a reasonable time frame. So depending on what kind of industry you're working in, what kind of, well, buying cycles we have, you either define the time frame as 90 days or 180 days or 360. That's up to you. However, you need to make sure that you're taking advantage of the signal. And here also I want to emphasize that it is very, very different to GDN remarketing. Who is targeting all website visitors in GDN remarketing? Okay, 1, 2, 3, a few people. And I tell you, in search, it is much, much more relevant. Because in search, you have not only the information whether he has been on your site, but also you have the information of what he's looking for right now. What is his need? What is he craving for right now? And the combination of these two signals is very, very powerful. You also have to think about the fact that if you, let's say, if you touch all website visitors, you can have a significant impact on your performance of the search campaign. If you only focus on, let's say, an even smaller group, maybe the cart visitors, which in total can only make 1% of the impression of the existing search campaign, it's not happening that your overall search campaign is going to improve very quickly because you're basically only touching a small amount of impressions. So make sure that you're not missing any of those old friends, because those are the ones which are the richest on data and which will have a significant impact on your campaign. So what do you need to do in order to make sure that you're not missing out on any of those? Well, your smart pixel needs to be implemented properly. Make sure that you're not missing out anyone. Doesn't matter where he moves, whether he's on the product page, the home page, or whether he bought something. Be sure that you're not missing out on them. So I said at the beginning that the most crucial information that you can have about the people who come to your page is the fact whether they have been there before, whether they know your brand, whether they are familiar to your web shop. But a lot of people, or I see it a lot of times, that it's actually this kind of information is easily available, but not everyone is able to say, hey, my returning visitors are actually performing 3 times or 2 times better. So in order to collect this crucial information, you need to have RLSA implemented in all of the campaigns. So this is the second step. And you might ask, there are a few things that you need to consider when you're implementing RLSA in all of the campaigns. So a quick hands up again, who has already done that? Okay, a few people. So what I'm going to show you now in the editor is something that you need to consider when you're implementing RLSA in all of your campaigns. So guys, can you switch to, perfect. So this is a test account. And we are now on the level of the ad groups. This is also the level where you are able to access the flexible reach. And as the editor normally is, well, or right now the editor is with the interest in remarketing options, it's more for GDN remarketing, you have to be a little bit more careful in the implementation. So that means if you add additional audiences into your ad groups, the default setting will be target and bid. And who of you guys know what the difference of target and bid only is? Okay, I think there are a few people who don't know what target and bid only, what the difference is. And so just quickly to be that we are all on the same page, if you put a campaign on bid only, which is our recommendation for RLSA, you have a reach based on all the keywords. So it's the keyword that triggers the ad. It doesn't matter who actually looks for, let's say, shoes. Every user who looks for shoes is eligible to see your ad. With bid-only settings, you're only changing the bids. If you say target and bid, your reach goes from this to that size, because these 2 criteria have to be met. People have to be on your side and also looking for that keyword. So be careful when you're inserting audiences and make sure that you're actually on the right settings. It works quite easy. So you have let's say, a CSV file where you insert the audience, the flexible reach, and the desired bid adjustment. You go into import CSV file, you go for paste the text, and if you then inserted all of the audience, you mark all of them and make sure that they are on bid only. So with this, you have within 5 or 10 minutes, you can have this very important information. Whether somebody has been on your website before or not, you can have that within 10 minutes in your account. Of course, depending on the size of the account. So, could you switch back to the presentation, please? Okay, so I've been talking about how important this information is, whether the user has been on your website or not. What are the reasons for that? Why do I actually think that those are the most important people and the most valuable audience? If we go a little bit deeper into the performance, we can see two quite important things. Take a look at the CPA comparison. The returning visitors, they usually have a much, much lower CPA than the new visitors. In this case, 61%. And again, it's a very common image that we see here. But why is this the case? Why is this CPA actually so much lower? Just think about it. The people who have been there and who know your brand, they don't need to click that often on your ads in order to be convinced to buy something again at your shop. And that's why the CPA is lower. At the same time, the conversion rate is much, much higher, which shows us then also, okay, the likelihood to buy something there because they know your shop is much higher. And based on these two KPIs, we can say, hey, this is your most valuable target group. So what I don't really want anyone, well, to happen who's sitting in this room is that you have to make this face, because you're missing out on your most valuable audience. But that's actually, that is happening quite often, because a lot of people do not know who their returning visitors are, and they don't know whether they are converting much better. And as I said, in 96% of the cases that I've seen, the returning visitors are much better in regards of performance. So what should happen that you are actually moving from this woman to become more like the old lady that I tried to show you at the beginning? I guess it's quite easy to guess. You have to increase your bids in order to be visible for the top position. And before I show you some, well, best practices in order to find the best bid modifier, I would like to make sure that there are a few, well, that the common misunderstandings regarding bid modifiers are clarified. So let's take a look at this. We have a strong CPA difference. Returning visitors are converting at 5 euros. And based on this and also the increased conversion rate, we can clearly say, hey, this is your most valuable target group. Make sure that you are actually getting every one of those and that you're not missing any one of those. Make sure that you don't miss any one of them, as these are the people who you should be willing to pay more. And then we can ask ourselves, when does the RLSA bid modifier actually have an effect? So what's the average bid modifier you have implemented so far? How much? 200. That's very good. And who has bid below 50%? Okay, I see a few people. And who is on the level of 200? Okay. So we have to ask ourselves, why is it so important? Or why am I actually telling you that is so important? Imagine following situation. You optimize your campaigns, and you're quite satisfied with your campaigns, but you see that there's a lot of potential in the returning visitors. You're having a max CPC of approximately 50 cents, and you're on an average position of, let's say, 3.3. If you then bid a little bit higher, let's say 10%, and you have a max CPC of 55 cents, what do you think is going to happen? Anyone? Well, there's nothing going to happen. So your answer was actually right. There's nothing going to happen, as this little increase of the max CPC won't help you to jump from position 3.3 to position 1. And what you need to make sure is that your most profitable target group sees you on number 1, and if they are looking for something that you are offering, that they are not overbid by your competitors. And that's why it is important to have an aggressive bid modifier. What you also need to be aware of is that this bid modifier doesn't apply on your effective CPC. It's applied on your max CPC. So let's say you are in position 3.3. You have a bid modifier of 200%. You're jumping on position 1. What is happening next? The audience that has already quite a high affinity to click quite good and with a high CTR is going to click even better. So the CTR is going up. With the increased CTR, the quality factor is going to go up again. And then as a result, your effective CPC is going down. So that's why you're not paying necessarily 300% more if you're bidding 300% more. So what are the factors that you need to consider when you choose the right bid modifier? You also need to be aware of that you're only touching a small portion of all of your impressions. At the beginning, we had 5% of all the impressions coming from returning visitors. That varies quite a lot, but I've seen a level of 5 to 15%. And when you choose the right bid modifier, for me it would be the most important to keep in mind, okay, what kind of cost effect do I have? What kind of CPA difference do we have right now? And the CPA difference is important to keep in mind in order to control your costs. But this is not the only thing. And we have a so-called rule of thumb formula that should give you an indication what kind of potential there is. So here we are talking about the relationship of the new visitor CPA and the returning visitor CPA. And the lower the returning visitor CPA is, the higher the recommended bid modifier, which then also should make you understand that the lower the returning visitor CPA is, the more you have to fight for them, the more important it is to get more conversions at that price. And we have done a lot of experiments and tested with a lot of bid adjustments, and sometimes we even saw that this is not enough to get the position effect. It's often not enough to get from position 4 or 3 to position 1, and that's why we put an extra buffer of 30% on top. So it is on the one hand the CPA difference that you need to keep in mind. But on the other hand, it's also the question, what kind of potential is there actually? If you're always on position 1.0 with all of your keywords and with all of your campaigns, there's not really much you can actually do. But I guess that's not really the case for all of your campaigns. So you have to think about your average position as well. And in this case, with using the rule of thumb that I've showed before, we have a recommended bid modifier of 205%. And this is completely justified in this situation as we have an average position of 3.2. And you need to have such an aggressive bid modifier in order to be a #1 for your returning visitors. So thinking about this, it is important to be a winner for your website visitors. Because on the one hand, those are the ones which usually convert on the cheapest price, because they know you and they don't have to click that much on the ads in order to convert, because they are much likely to convert. But also, if you think about your own purchasing behavior when you're online. So imagine you are looking for furniture, and you have seen some good products on a certain site, and you think, yeah, that's not too bad, but I actually want to check whether there are better offers. So you research, you go on forums maybe, or you go and compare some prices, and then when you gathered all the information, you search again. And that's the point, and that's the time when you as an advertiser have to step in and make sure that for this user who have been there on your site, It's not the competition that he sees on the number one. Also, when you look at your analytics data, it's never the case that somebody clicks on an ad and converts immediately. The path, the typical conversion path, they go quite long. And not to lose them during this path, especially if they have already been on your site, is essential. So I think having this in mind, gaining all the information of your returning visitors. So how are they performing on your website? How are they performing versus new visitors? And making sure that you're not missing out on them, not on any of them, then you can go even further. But you have to keep in mind that you have to have, for remarketing lists for search ads, a certain user base in order to make the product work properly. So it is important to address and to prefer this overall total website visitors. If you have a sufficient database, you can go further and you can say, okay, within all of the people who have been on my site, I will address them a bit differently. And as Jeanette has shown you yesterday, one way to do that is based on the purchasing funnel. So segmentation according the purchasing funnel is possible, and you can reflect that with your list strategy. So taking a look at the funnel steps. And here again, it is very important to include all of the funnel steps. Because if you're only focusing on, let's say, those cart viewers, they only make a tiny percentage of your search campaigns. If you're bidding higher for them, yeah, you get more conversions of those cart visitors, but they might be 1% of your impressions. And in order to have a proper effect, go for the biggest group, the website visitors. Because what you see here as well is that the number of users are decreasing the further they are in the funnel. But of course, you can still do that, and you should also do it in order to not miss out on those cart visitors. But how do you do it from a technical point of view? As you know, it's not the case that all of the remarketing list settings that are available in GDN are available on search. What is available right now are these options. Tag-based lists, so you can work with your smart pixel in order to make sure if that is implemented properly, you are not missing out on any of your users. You can work with URL-based lists, which can mirror the funnel steps perfectly. You can work with custom combinations in order to exclude some of the audiences who you might not want to address again. And you also have the options to work with custom parameters. But that is a little bit more, well, advanced, and I will show you later in the Google Tag Manager how that works. However, what you need to be aware of is that, again, we have some technical limitations which only allow us to work with lists with a minimum of 1,000 users. And 1,000 users of your overall search campaign is quite low, so make sure that you have the richest lists. But who here in this room actually doesn't have a remarketing tag implemented? Hands up. Anyone? Okay, I see a few hands. And there's actually still the option to do RLSA even if you don't have a remarketing list in place. So the alternative that we have is not as full of potential as the smart pixel. But what you can do is you can work with the conversion tag. And I will show you that. So can you switch to the laptop? Okay, so I'm here in my test account, and what you can do is you can transfer your conversion tag to your remarketing list. So you go on Shared Library, on Audiences, and then you have the option to choose between different kind of lists. And one is visitors of a page with a specific tag. If you choose this, you see all of the conversion tags and remarketing tags that have been generated from this account, and you can easily then use this conversion tag as a remarketing list and see the data of how, in a later, longer process, are those users who bought something, how are they performing versus the new visitors. And that would be an option for all of the people who have not had the opportunity to work with the Smart Pixel. So back to the presentation, please. So this would be an appropriate list and bid strategy. How you would go on and prefer your the visitors who have already been on your website. So you're still aggressive enough in order to make sure that you're not missing out on them, but you are also considering the funnel steps. But at the end of the day, of course, it is up to you and up to your judgment how much you want to pay and how much you're willing to bid for those returning visitors. And you also have to make a judgment based on the CPAs in your campaign. And for that reason, it is very important, again, to implement RLSA in all of your campaigns, just to be able to actually do that kind of statement and to actually say, hey, my returning visitors are performing better or worse. And as I said, in most of the cases that I've seen, they're performing much, much better. But of course, this is only the start. So as soon as you have touched those returning visitors, and as soon as you're treating them differently with a different bid modifier, there's much more to do. And you have to be careful, or you have to keep in mind and take a look at, hey, is this actually the right bid modifier? Is this getting all of my returning visitors, or am I bidding too high? So what you need to do is you have to have a regular reporting. And you can, on the one hand, ask your account manager to help you with that, but you can also do that by yourself. So you go on the audience tab and compare how the performance of the audiences of the different campaigns are versus the total campaign. And you should focus on those main KPIs. So you take a look at what kind of average position has my returning audience. If that's not really different than from the overall campaign, then you're not bidding enough, because you're not treating those returning visitors, which have the lowest CPAs in most of the cases and the highest conversion rates, you're not treating them differently, and you're very probably missing out on them. Also, CTR, because that shows you, is there actually a higher interest of this returning visitor versus my new visitors. And of course, conversion rate and CPA, because that gives you an idea how much potential there is. And also whether you are bidding, well, too low or too high for this returning visitors. And well, everything that I've said so far concerns your existing reach. So your existing keywords and your existing campaigns. And it's the question of how do you distribute your budget more efficiently and more smartly. However, with this information, whether somebody has been on your site or not, and that might be a quite, well, straightforward information and a simple information, but also at the same time a very crucial one. Because as we've seen before, it's the information and the audience signal that makes the biggest difference. And with this information, you can do much more than focusing on your existing campaigns, which is the first and, well, the most important step. So what you can do is you can experiment with different reach settings. So I've explained before the concept of bid only and target and bid. What you can do with remarketing lists for search ads is you can experiment with keywords that are usually way too expensive or way too generic, but that are relevant to your audience. If we go back to the example of the fashion retailer, maybe very generic keywords like fashion or fashion week are relevant to your audience, but somebody who's looking for something very generic like that and converting on your site, there's quite a wide connection. But if you do that with RLSA, you're making sure that on the one hand, you have the generic keyword and that kind of reach, but at the same time, you are much more limited as you're only focusing on the people who have been on your site. And here, what you need to consider is then the target settings putting them on target and bid and on a separate campaign. So that would be one option of what else you can do with remarketing lists for search ads. We have a few other examples, and a few examples that show what kind of potential there actually is in this information, whether somebody has been on my site or not, and how you can combine this product, this RLSA product, with other Google products. One example for that is Grainger. That's an American retailer focused on maintenance tools. And what they did is combining DSA and remarketing list for search ads to extend the reach. And as you can see here, they had very good results. So 1,000% of increase in CTR and return on ad spend. And I think these figures are quite impressive because it shows you what kind of potential there is if you have this powerful information. So what else can you do? What other advanced strategies do we have? One option would also be to say, I have a returning visitor and I want to talk to him differently. I'm not only making sure that we are not missing out on him and we are not losing him to the competition, but I also want to have a specific message for him. So you have the option of cross-selling, which is quite interesting. And you can be quite creative in what you want to do with the information. And here again, you have the target and bid settings for a specific ad. However, what you need to be considering is that you have to be careful what you're actually saying. So you can't really say, hey, I know you've been on my site and you've been visiting our sales selection, because that's not really, well, that's a little bit more too intruding and against our policies. So don't say anything like visited our sales selection. Another specific or advanced strategy that we can do with remarketing lists for search ads is we can be quite specific in the segmentation of users. So if you think about your customers and your visitors, you have those people who are very keen on the sales and those users who are willing to pay a little bit more. So what you can do for remarketing lists for search ads is you can differentiate between these two audiences with the help of Google Tag Manager. So what you're actually saying to your webmaster is, I want to be sure that there's the remarketing tag number 1, firing only when those people come and buying and purchasing or putting products into the cart if the value is below 1,000 euros. And I've got remarketing tag number 2, firing when it's a user who's looking into products that are more than 1,000 euros worth. And I'm going to show you that with a little demo. So if you can switch back to the laptop. Perfect. So you work with the Google Tag Manager. Hands up. Okay, again, quite a lot of people, so that's good. So we're here now in the Google Tag Manager, and as you can see here, I've got quite a high number of remarketing tags. The number 1, remarketing tag number 1, is only fired if the value is above 1,000 euros. And the remarketing tag number 2, lower than 1,000 euros. And the number 2 is only fired if it's greater than 1,000 euros. And I'm going to show you how that actually works. So this is a fake site that will show you how the remarketing tags are working. A luxury travel site, and imagine I'm a customer who wants to book a week-long stay in one of the most luxurious places ever. So I book a product for the total price of 799, and I submit this reservation. Who is familiar to the Google Remarketing Tag Assistant? Okay, a few people. So the Google Tag Assistant is this little thing here that shows you how many of the, what kind of remarketing tag do you have implemented and whether it's working. And as you see here, the value is below 1,000 euros. And taking a look at the Google Tag Manager, a second, it should normally, if that would work properly, show that the remarketing tag number 1 is fired. Well, unfortunately, it's not working properly right now, but if you're familiar with the Tag Assistant, you hopefully get an idea how this normally should work. If we go back and imagine I'm another customer who wants to buy something with a value above 1,000 euros. I submit the reservation, and I try again, and hopefully this is working right now. It's not, but what you normally would see here as well is that the second remarketing tag is fired. And then you can go quite easily in the account and say, I want to prefer those people who are very valuable for me and who are buying and looking into products that are above a value of 1,000 euros. So if we go back to the presentation, this is one way of, well, specifically segmenting your user. And it's all about, of course, addressing the people who have been on your site. But you can be even a bit more specific, and you can say, hey, I want to address those people who came from a specific source or who have clicked on an ad which advertised a specific offer, such as something that you advertise on a YouTube masthead. So you can use a YouTube masthead, for example, if you have a very specific offer that you just want to push in to a lot of people who don't know your business yet. And here, if you do that, you can make sure that you collect all the people who, on the one hand, viewed the user, and then on the second hand, clicked on this masthead. So if you have the differentiation of people who viewed the masthead and who clicked on it, you can use those tag-based lists later for remarketing lists for search ads as well. Because you only have to tell your account manager, make sure that there are 2 remarketing tags implemented in the masthead so that you can readdress them and that you can use this information. So I think a lot of options that you can do with RLSA, a lot of things that you can use and that you can do when you have this crucial information that somebody has been on your site before. And the main takeaway of this session that you need to keep in mind when you're leaving this room later is that you need to make sure that you're actually having access to this information of how your returning visitors are performing versus your new visitors. Do they have higher conversion rate, and do they have a lower CPA? If that's the case, make sure that you get the maximum out of those low-cost conversions. And if you do all of that and then go further and do some advanced strategies such as the masthead readdressing of the user or a specific segmentation, if you do all of that, you are kind of moving into the direction of becoming this old friendly lady towards your user, and you make your shop experience a much more personal one, which helps to turn potential customers into actual customers. So I hope you guys enjoyed this session so far, and thanks a lot for your attention. I would like to ask my colleague Jeanette Flores on the stage now, and feel free to pop any questions you want.
Hi again, everyone. So if you have any questions regarding remarketing lists for search ads or audience buying in general, feel free to ask now. This is your time to shine with questions. Yeah.
Hey there. So if you want to change the ad copy with your RLSA, how would you go about that? Do you have to duplicate the campaigns and apply the audience that way, or is there a setting you can select?
If you want to change the ads?
Yeah, the ad copy. So, you know, if you're targeting users who have visited the site once and you want to change the ad copy messaging, how would you go about that?
So if you want to change the ad messages in order to have a specific message towards your returning visitors. Right now, what you have to do, you have to have a specific campaign where you then change the settings to target embed, so that you're making sure that the returning visitors are seeing this specific message.
Yeah, it's exactly how Deepthy said. At the moment, you need to create a separate campaign for that and do target and bid. But this is a feature request that we got from a lot of advertisers, and we are working on an option to integrate different ads into the existing remarketing campaign, into the existing campaigns. But it's not the highest priority, as you can imagine. But it's on the roadmap. Good question. More questions? Yeah, I have a point. Yesterday, someone asked if there is, if the similar audience compatibility with remarketing list for search ads is on the roadmap. Actually, after the presentation yesterday, I had a meeting with our product team, and it's actually one of the top 5 priorities that we have. So it should come out anytime soon in Q3. So it's a big ask. Any more questions? Okay, I think then we're fine. Thank you, Deepthy, for the great presentation. Really interesting. Thank you.
I'm just gonna ask you to stay on stage for a few seconds longer, because do you guys remember that we had Peter up on stage yesterday? Who remembers Peter? Hands, show of hands. Who remembers Peter? Yeah. Okay, almost everybody remembers Peter. He did a good job at branding himself. Can we go back to the masthead slide just for a second?
Sure.
Because this was new for me as well. You'd think that we as AMs know everything, but this one came up and I was like, I didn't know we could do this. Can I ask you a question? How many of you have used mastheads in the past 6 months? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and of those of you who've used mastheads, would this be something that would be of value to you? Would this be something you'd want to be doing if people have seen this? The people who did the masthead, can I see show of hands? Yes, no? Yes? Why? Can I ask you why? No? It just seems like a smart thing to do? Yeah, right? It actually, I'm just curious at the intersection we're making here between performance advertising and branding. Can you just dive into a bit more detail about how this works? What they need to know about remarketing to be able to do this?
Of course. So what you need to be aware of that is the fact that we can measure quite well what people did with your masthead. So that means how many people have viewed it, how many have been engaged with it, and also how many have clicked on that. And this information that somebody has been, well, paying attention to this kind of advertising and has seen your brand at that kind of platform is an enormous potential of, well, information that you need to use. So what you need to do in this case for the next masthead when you are booking something like this is
for example.
Good to know. So how much is the implementation, like how's the implementation process?
So I would say the next week when you book the masthead.
Very good. So the next week, when you book the masthead, make sure that you talk to your account manager and tell him, hey, I want to collect the users who have viewed and clicked on my ad. And what the account manager is going to do then is they are going to make sure that they are remarketing text based on the account that you choose implemented in that masthead. And then if the masthead is running and people are looking at it and people are maybe clicking on it and getting on your page, the remarketing lists are filling up with those users. And knowing this about a user, that they have seen the masthead and clicked on it and maybe converted on it, is something you definitely need to take advantage of.
Thank you very much, because for the past year, a lot of the feedback we got about our YouTube products and our YouTube solutions is that it's fun and it works on YouTube and we get a lot of reach, but how do we know what people are doing on our website afterwards? And now, as you can see, a year later, we're coming to the point where we're bringing these two platforms together, and it's really good to get a bit more insight in actually how we're doing that. And coming back to Peter's presentation yesterday, we put branding in here for a reason, because it's becoming a way to look at the upper funnel, whereas at the lower funnel you're already quite dominant as a performance advertiser. And tying into James Cashmore and Neil Halpin's story, where people are shopping, and now you know who's shopping and how you can bring new people into your audience by using different targeting methods and different platforms. Thank you very much. Very insightful. Yeah, of course.
Just a technical explanation. This works because we're using a tag-based list for the mastheads. That's the tag-based list that we implement here. So we can use tag-based lists for RLSA, as you know. Another feature request that we often get is, can we use true view lists for RLSA? And this is a beta that we are working on. So if you are interested, if you are a big potential customer, then feel free to reach out to us and we can test this with you. So we have kind of a workaround where we can implement tag-based lists into TrueView campaigns also. So that would work as well. And as Tobias has said, there is so much potential for masthead, using masthead lists for remarketing lists for search ads, and actually no advertiser is doing this yet globally. So please reach out to us if you want to do this, and maybe we can do a great case study as well. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much.